It's the feel of the cool air on your skin, the way the sunlight hit the old oak tree, and the quiet sound of your daughter's heels on the floorboards above you. I remember thinking, aha, this is it. This is the moment I finally get to see her step into her new life. A life I helped her build from the ground up. A life I sacrificed everything for. And then I walked into the ballroom. The air was thick with the scent of lilies and wealth, a kind of wealth that whispered about old money and a name I'd spent decades trying to forget. I was just another woman in a nice dress, a quiet ghost in a room full of people who didn't remember my name. Before I dive into my story, I'd really appreciate it if you could let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and if you'd consider subscribing to my channel. It would mean the world to me and help me keep sharing more stories like this. Thank you so much for being here. It's a funny thing, what Eleanor Vance remembers about a day that changes everything. It's not the grand moments, but the quiet details, the weight of the air, thick with the scent of lilies, the way the sunlight hit the old oak tree outside the grand ballroom, and the quiet sound of my daughter's heels on the floorboards above me. It was her wedding day. My daughter, Lily. As I adjusted the lace on my dress, I felt a deep sense of calm, a beautiful conversation between a mother and her child. The venue itself was a fortress of opulence, a place where money was not just spent, but displayed. I found my name card on a round table near the back, a cluster of a few other distant relatives. The card was thick, ivory stock with my name, Eleanor Vance, written in an elegant sweeping script. As I reached for it, a familiar, cold tension settled in my shoulders. My hand froze just above the card, under my name. Someone had scrawled a note in a different, sharper pen. It was cold, ugly, and it screamed in the quiet of the room, "Fake mom." My stomach twisted into a hard, painful coil. For 19 years. I had raised Lily alone after her father and his family walked out when she was just a baby. I taught her to ride a bike. I comforted her through every scraped knee. I read her stories until my voice was hoarse. I was the one who worked 2 jobs, a designer by day and a waitress by night, so she could have dance lessons and art supplies. I was the one who bought her first car, the one who helped her apply to college. I was the one who saw her through every single challenge. And here I was, shoved into a chair on the edge of a world I didn't belong to, surrounded by people who couldn't be bothered to remember my name or acknowledge the woman who made it all possible. I felt a quiet fury bubble up, a controlled rage. I sat down and took a sip of my water, trying to compose myself. I could see the groom's family across the room, polished suits and self-satisfied expressions. I watched my ex-mother-in-law, a woman who had once told me I wasn't fit to carry their family name, sitting at the head table with a serene smile, a position she had never held in my life. Her son, Lily's father, was nowhere to be seen. He never was. A woman at my table leaned in to whisper to her husband, and they both chuckled, giving a sideways glance at my simple shoes. I felt like a mistake, a charity invite. The music stopped. The room's chatter died. I heard the mic crackle. I turned, and Lily was standing in the middle of the dance floor, her heels off, holding Caleb's hand. "I'm done," she said into the mic. Her voice didn't shake. "We're leaving." People laughed at first, like it was a joke, but she dropped his hand and walked straight toward me, her dress dragging through flower petals and spilled champagne. She didn't look back. Neither did I. She grabbed my arm and pulled me through the crowd. "Let's go," she said. "We're not staying." We didn't say a word for the first 40 minutes, just the sound of the road, Lily's bare feet tapping against the pedals, and the rustle of her dress. She took the exit for the old neighborhood without needing directions. My place isn't fancy. It's a single story with a busted fence and faded paint. But the mortgage is paid, and I've kept the lights on since she left for college. It's home. She parked on the curb and sat there, her hands still on the wheel. Her jaw was tight, and her eyes, though full of resolve, held the same hurt I felt. I saw the car before you did, she said, her eyes dead ahead. Last night at the rehearsal dinner. It was already on the table. I stared at her, a wave of confusion washing over the anger. And you still let today happen, I asked. I had to be sure, she said. I needed to see if they'd actually go through with it. They did. She pulled out her phone and held it up between us, hitting play on a video. The audio was clear, too clear. Caleb's father, Richard Kingston, was at the bar. The woman's just a glorified gardener. Right, her projects are barely above public works. Then Caleb's mother. Let's be kind. She's a landscape designer. Let's use her proper title. And then Caleb, her fiancé, stood there grinning. Can't wait to see her face when she figures out she could have had her real mom walk her down the aisle. The video cut off. My stomach twisted again, this time with a different kind of pain. He knew. The whole damn family knew. He knew, I whispered. Lily turned toward me, her face blank, her voice steady. They all did. I told them you were the one who raised me. They didn't care. Why didn't you tell me this before today, I asked, my voice cracking. I could have stayed home. She shook her head. Because this wasn't just about me or you. It was about watching people for who they really are. I needed proof. So you married him just to catch them slipping? I didn't marry him. She opened the glove box and pulled out a folded manila envelope. She dropped it on my lap. Never signed the prenuptial agreement. My lawyer reviewed it, revised it, and sent back a counter. They ignored it. So, it's invalid. I opened the envelope. Inside was a packet of paper, legal filings and notarized letters, all in her name, all airtight. I stared at her. You had a lawyer? I've had a lawyer since February. Confidential. I shook my head. How long have you been planning this? Since I started building something worth protecting. She pulled out her phone again, and this time a website loaded. It was a clean professional homepage with her face on it. Lily Vance, co-founder, Vance Architectural Landscaping. That's your company, I asked. It's our company. She said valuation is around $65 million. I just stared at her. My daughter, the one I taught how to plant a seed, was a multimillionaire, and I had no idea. You never told me. Didn't want to jinx it, she said, and I didn't want anyone thinking I got here because of them. She finished the rest of her soda and tossed the empty can into the sink with a clean clank. Then she headed to the spare bedroom like she still lived here. I stayed in the kitchen, my hands flat on the table, the papers spread in front of me. She walked in a few minutes later and slid a new folder in front of me. Open it. Inside were stock certificates and legal agreements. What is this? I asked. That's my trust, she said. I've been buying into Kingston real estate and development since last year. 35%, as of last week. My mouth went dry. You bought stock in Caleb's family business? No, she said. I bought control. I looked back down at the documents. They were clean, traced through holding companies, the kind of setup people with serious money used to stay invisible. She reached into her bag again and pulled out a black leather-bound folder. Inside were spreadsheets, red-marked documents, and internal emails. Here's their inventory discrepancy report. Over 20,000 in unit loss. And here's the vendor list. Look at this company. Garden Green Supplies, overcharging Kingston by 15%. And guess who owns it? Caleb's uncle. She laid them out one by one like puzzle pieces. She slid a document toward me. They're not just stupid, they're reckless. And once this goes public, they'll be radioactive. She pulled out 3 final documents, signed proxy agreements, 2 from minority shareholders, 1 from an independent board director named Anna Carter. I've been working on this for months. Anna agreed to back me fully if I could reach quorum. With their support, I can call an emergency executive vote. And what do you need me for? I asked. She took out one last paper, a proxy authorization form. I'm transferring my vote to you. I stared at her. What? I'm still a stakeholder, but you'll hold the voting rights. They can't say I'm just a pissed-off ex-fiancé. But if they have to answer to you, they'll choke on it. She nodded. Exactly. The woman they called a gardener. The glorified hired help. I picked up the pen and I signed. She closed the folder and slid it back into her bag like nothing earth-shaking just happened. "Meeting's Thursday," she said. "Be ready. Wear a real suit this time." I didn't have a real suit. "You will." She finished her water and went to bed. Thursday morning, Lily tossed me a charcoal gray suit, still wrapped in plastic. It felt stiff. Too clean. I'd never worn anything like it. I was used to canvas work pants and boots that could take a fall from a ladder. But I put it on. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see a gardener. I saw someone they were going to regret underestimating. We walked into Kingston Real Estate's headquarters at 9:04 a.m., 4 minutes after the board meeting had started. Lily pushed open the frosted glass doors like she owned the building. Inside the boardroom, everyone turned at once. Richard Kingston sat at the head of the table. He stood as soon as he saw us. "You're not allowed in here," he snapped. Lily didn't even blink. "I am an executive," she cut in. "As is my proxy." She pointed at me. He looked like he'd swallowed a thumbtack. "You're bluffing." Lily calmly opened her briefcase and pulled out a single document. "Filed Monday. Verified by the corporate secretary. You were copied." She laid it flat in front of him. I saw the stamp from the State Legal Transfer of Proxy Authority, my name bold at the top. Lily turned to the room. "I'd like to submit new business. Emergency item. Call for an executive vote. Agenda item breach of compliance protocol, financial misconduct, and negligent governance." Half the table stiffened. Richard laughed once, sharp and bitter. "You think you can just stage a coup?" Lily didn't raise her voice. "I don't think. I know." She stepped forward and opened her folder, passing out copies of the red flag documents like a teacher handing out a pop quiz. Vendor fraud through Garden Green Supplies, overbought by nearly $1.3 million. Internal losses misstated in quarterly reports, falsified city documentation. One man started flipping pages. Another rubbed his temples. Richard snapped, "This is baseless." "Then prove it," Lily said. "Vote to audit." He stood again. "This company has been in our family for 50 years. Your legacy ended the second you started funneling fake invoices through shell vendors." She said, "You didn't build this. You gutted it." Caleb finally spoke. His voice was soft. "Lily, come on. This doesn't have to get ugly." She turned her head, her eyes cold. "You already made it ugly." The room went silent. Lily took a breath, then nodded toward me. "My proxy, Eleanor Vance, is prepared to call the vote along with shareholders Anna Carter, Joseph Nunes, and Kimberly Rice." Anna, the sharp-eyed woman, raised her hand. "Confirmed." Joseph and Kimberly followed. That gave us 53%. Richard's face drained. "I move to remove Richard Kingston, Walter Kingston, and Caleb Kingston from executive authority effective immediately." Lily said. I stood up. "I second." Anna took charge. All in favor. Hands rose. 8. Motion carries. Richard's voice cracked. "You can't do this." Lily leaned across the table. "You handed me your arrogance. I weaponized it." I watched as Richard collapsed back into his chair, stunned. We walked out. No victory parade, no applause, just quiet heels against tile and a heavy door swinging shut behind us. Out in the lobby. Lily finally exhaled. Her shoulders dropped a little. I didn't say anything. She looked at me and grinned. "Nice suit." "Nice takedown." We stepped outside into the sun. As we got into the car, I squinted up at the sky and thought, what the hell just happened? I had dirt under my fingernails 3 weeks ago. Now, I was board chair of a multi-million-dollar company I didn't even know I'd been walking toward. Lily popped the trunk and tossed in her briefcase like it was nothing, like this was Tuesday. We drove back to the house. I leaned back and stared out the window. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah, just trying to wrap my head around it." She laughed under her breath. "I've been planning this for years. You just jumped in 3 days ago and handled it like a pro." I didn't feel like a pro. I felt like a woman who once changed her shirt in a gas station bathroom between shifts because she couldn't afford to be 5 minutes late. "You know what I was thinking in there," I said. While they were all sitting around that table, I kept seeing myself back in the garage, wiping oil off my hands with a shop towel I'd used all week. She reached over and rested her hand on mine for a second. Nothing soft about it, just solid. You did what you had to, she said. I noticed everything, and I believed her. A week after Caleb walked off my porch, Lily and I stood in the middle of Oak Ridge Park, 3 blocks from the duplex we used to live in. There was a big blue banner behind us that read, Vance Urban Equity Fund, Accessible Spaces, Real Legacy. We'd taken the first payout from Q2 dividends, carved off a clean slice, and poured it straight into getting supplies to communities in places like this. Lily stood at the mic. She didn't talk about her company's valuation or the hostile takeover. She talked about a woman who drove a beat-up sedan and sketched out designs on old napkins. She talked about the power of showing up, of building something not just for yourself, but for the people who helped you get there, and for the first time. I felt like all those late nights and scraped knees weren't a hardship. They were the foundation. I didn't know it then, but they were the beginning of our legacy.